Welcome Investigators! This video compares the original 2016 Core Starter Box with the 2021 revised Core Starter Box. It is primarily intended for those that have either one or two boxes already and are thinking of upgrading. But if you currently have 0 cores and want to know if you should pick up 1 or 2 original starters at a discount or maybe second hand, versus a single brand new model, this might also be helpful. Or if you just want to see what's new, that's also cool. Here are 2 brand new unopened products, so let's play Spot the Difference. Before we begin, let's tell you we are using the most recent printing of the original core from January 2021, which is the most likely version you can buy new right now. But did you know this was manufactured only 4 months before this new revised box? We do own multiple day 1 printings of the original game, and we may mention the differences along the way, like the sleeve recommendations shifting from FFG to GameGenic, for example. Right from the get-go, something has changed. Gone is the iconic small square box that has served living card games since their inception, and in comes the Marvel Champion style oblong box that is larger in every dimension. If you assume that this new product is basically 2 cores stuck together, you could definitely have fitted everything into the original size box. But let's open them up and dive right in. Not only is this physically larger to match the box size, but it also has 8 additional pages. The cover art is still the same piece by Ignacio Busan Lascano, but much more zoomed in. This is probably the item that has changed the most out of any part of this product. But one thing that will never change is the tiny text. The book is maybe 20% larger, but see, the art and text hasn't grown with it. They are simply more spread out. Instead of diving right into first game setup, they have a fundamental concept section beginning with winning and losing. This segment does appear in the original guide, but has been brought forward to the front of the book. There are a couple of sequence changes like this to try and present information in a more digestible order. And did you notice they got rid of the golden rule? There are more illustrations, pictures and example cards, which is a great use of all this extra space and just what you want in a learn to play tutorial. The first game setup is no longer a dry series of text paragraphs. Every single step has a picture, coloured boxes and even arrows. They have definitely pulled out all the stops to make this the best tutorial possible, assuming the words are large enough for you to actually read. A couple of the steps have actually changed, but this is due to the way the cards are packaged. Plus, there is a tiny summary of who each investigator is and their playstyle. Most of the other content is the same, but in a new order. Here is an example of how certain paragraphs have been reworded. Once the rules finish and you get to the starter deck section, you can see much more space has been given over to listing every card in their starter deck, plus several paragraphs on how to play that investigator. Don't get excited, as these are exactly the same 1 of every 0 level card and 2 of each neutral card found in the original. In fact, this whole section is just cut and pasted from the free 2016 PDF. The only thing that has changed on the rear is the names of the Chaos tokens now appear, abridging the explanation text. This has a similar reframing of the original art and size increase, but is still 32 pages. This extra space does allow them to stop some, and only some, instances where sections run over the page. The body text is the same size unfortunately, but the headings are slightly larger. The 5 instances of errata from the FAQ have been incorporated, but that is literally it. The rules reference for the game does not include multi-class cards or any new keywords or tokens, and it flat out denies the existence of a tarot slot. We try very hard not to give our personal opinions on this channel, but this is probably the component that has changed the least. Other than the size, it is identical. What am I, chopped liver? And the fact they choose to fill this extra space with art rather than increase the font size or provide additional illustrations like the Learn to Play booklet. Oh, and the Midnight Mask setup has some connection arrows now. But what we did spot is that all references to deluxe boxes and Mythos packs have been expunged from the text. Know what I'm saying? The new game comes with a double-sided advertisement for the latest Arkham Files board game, and a set of novels set in the same Arkham Horror universe. The older product doesn't have a disposable advert, but does have images printed on the inner box sides for 3 different Arkham Files games, only one of which is receiving new content, and also the first card game expansion, in its now obsolete format. The new product just has the logo all the way round. But if we go back through the mists of time to 2016, the first iteration of the core had the logo all the way round and a disposable advert, in the form of the now legendary full colour catalogue, which was updated at least once per year. The original game came with 1.5 punch boards totaling 149 tokens. This new version has 2 full punch boards that are about 1.5 inches wider, delivering 229 tokens. Exactly the same are the 44 Chaos tokens, no change at all. Entirely different is this lead Investigator token, which people have managed perfectly fine without for 5 years now. They have increased the number of damage tokens, as this product is intended to support 4 players, and also the number of horror tokens, but the designs for both remain the same. The number of clues has also increased thanks to the pesky per investigator rule, and they also have added a 3 clue token as well. Here is what it looks like on the Doom side. A similar change has also been made to resource tokens, although we keep saying just make them double-sided. There are more single point chits, plus some brand new 3 of, and also a 5 of. The larger the quantity, the larger the token, which is great for identifying them across the table. In both games you receive the same Ziploc bag full of 5 mini cards. As you will probably have noticed from the Learn to Play guide, the art of each investigator has been redone. Why? Well, we only like to provide facts on this channel, so we aren't going to speculate. You can probably still get hold of the original mini cards if these new ones aren't your cup of tea. Or you can use the standees and miniatures from other Arkham Files products. This is an easy difference to spot. In the new version, you get a Chaos bag to draw your tokens from. In the old version, you don't. Thus forcing you to seek out your own Mythos-approved Eldritch Teapot. And the paint glows in the dark. Wonder where they got that idea from, eh? The original box had a Ziploc bag with all the scenario-backed cards, plus your 5 investigator cards in kind of numerical order. You literally had to start assembling your scenarios from a list of names, numbers and symbols, which was lengthy and unintuitive. The new box, however, has all 3 separated out and individually wrapped with no extraneous cards, and the name clearly visible on each one with no spoilers. You probably won't notice, but these 3 are even in play order, so you can just remove the first pack and leave the rest sealed. You will need to transfer some encounter cards from the scenarios you have played to the next one, so they aren't all self-contained. But it certainly provides a friendlier and easier experience. And when we say self-contained, we mean it, as here is Lita Chandler just where she should be. A few of the cards have also gotten some new art. But again, no clue as to what was wrong with the old stuff. This image is still good enough to appear in the campaign guide, but no longer on its original card. The text and mechanics remain unchanged. Even the card number and the core box symbol are identical, which might lead to some new player confusion in years to come when they mistake the originals for promo cards or something. Brace yourself for more changes, everyone. In fact, where do we even start? There are now at least 2 of each class card and more neutrals than you can shake a stick at, thus removing the requirement that you purchase a minimum of 2 products just to get a single playset. Although, if you want 2 investigators to each have a pair of the same card, like Agnes and Daisy both having 2 shrivelings, obviously you will need more cards. Knives are just as good, right? Everyone loves knives. Like the scenarios, your investigators come pre-packaged, rather than a big block in a Ziploc. But, as we mentioned, these are literally the same suggested decks from the original, with 1 of everything plus some neutrals. By having all 5 pre-built, there aren't enough cards to remove Mind Over Matter from Roland, for example. But this does mean setup is friendlier and faster. With a complex game like a customizable card game, small things like this can really help new players feel less daunted. Think of how much time you would save in a 4-player game now you don't have to build from scratch. And look at that art! Aside from the 5 investigators, 16 player cards have had their art replaced or modified, and we can't find a common link as to why. The investigators are now all done by the same artist, as opposed to 4 out of 5. This is Alexander Koch. He is the fellow that did all the art for the Investigator starters, and has been a regular FFG contributor for years. Let's start with Wendy, who now looks like an actual child, or some weird bubble-headed doll, but art is subjective, so what do we know? Her signature card and her personal weakness, which both feature her, have also been redone. That's quite generous. And they got Alexander to do both to maintain the continuity of look and style. He also redid Agnes Baker's weakness, and rather than changing her signature item, seems to have made her investigator portrait more like it instead. Daisy's tote has had a bit of a touch-up. The bag and hands remain the same, but the outfit has had a makeover to bring it into line. And it wasn't by the original artist either, although we are pleased to see she is still credited. And these new ladies also appear on class cards too. But none of the men get a glow up. They still retain their signature cards with their old looks, which is very odd. As you can see, Skids has totally regressed back towards his Herman Munster look. Where does this leave the other Arkham Files games? Or the wider lore? They've literally just published an art book. It's very odd. Okay, sticking strictly to the facts, here is a slideshow of the player cards that have changed art. Did you spot there were no Mystic cards that got a makeover? FFG are probably just doing this to screw with our brains. Your experience cards for deck building are now kept sealed and separate, again helping new players out by stopping them mixing up the wrong magnifying glass or beat cop. As well as those classics found in the original starter, there are 13 additional cards, 2 from each class and 3 neutrals, because 10 copies of Emergency Cash isn't enough. The old card set ended at 182, Dreams of Relier, and these extra cards run from 183 to 195. They are drawn from a diverse range of products. Yes, you may have a slideshow. It is interesting to scrutinise what they have chosen, as they aren't just intended for this campaign but for all your future adventures. These are new staple cards like Machete and Dr. Milan that the designers want every player to have access to regardless of what other products they own. Don't forget that with the new format of player card box and campaign box, it is perfectly possible to have your revised core set be the only player cards you have access to, yet still play through every single campaign. Looks like we've just discovered a new nightmare mode, people. You could be cynical and see these cards as a hotfix for where the game has problems, like the fact that rogues have a hard time discovering clues, ergo every rogue now has access to lockpicks, or the single ally and accessory slots are too restrictive, thus everyone now has access to Charisma and Relic Hunter. Although, with the other classes, they appear to be getting more of what they're already good at. One last thing is that they have increased the text size on the titles of each card. This also applies to the scenario cards too, maybe just by 1 or 2 points like they did with the headers in the rulebooks. We are definitely in favour of anything that makes tiny text easier to read, and on many cards it looks okay. But as you can see, in these cases the text now bleeds into the lower borders. Before we depart this land of confusion, we do want to mention that all this convenience of setup does rely on single-use plastics, unlike the reusable bags of the original product. As people who do a lot of filming by the waterside for some incomprehensible reason, we see firsthand the volume of plastic waste. Just saying. Speaking of plastic, the final new thing is this insert tray, which is actually designed to conveniently store cards post-purchase, as opposed to the cardboard one, which is only intended to stop things moving about in transit. Previously, if you wanted any kind of sorting and accessibility, then you would need a third-party product to help you out. But now you can store your current and future card game purchases in here, as well as your tokens and what have you. Well, those are all the major things we think you should know about when comparing which of these core boxes you want to buy, or if upgrading is a worthwhile expense for you. If you think there is something we missed, then do let us know in the comments below. Lots of people are probably asking themselves what's the difference right now, so if you are a member of a Facebook group or Discord server, please consider helping them out by sharing this video. Not saying we're into bribery or anything, but we, and probably they, would appreciate it.